We're back with a Fox News alert. Tension between the U.S. and Russia at an all-time high following President Obama's decision to impose sanctions on that country. So what happened to the Russian reset? And what could this mean for the president-elect, Mr. Trump, weighing in with a statement saying, quote, "It's time for our country to move on to bigger and better things. Nevertheless, in the interest of our country and its great people, I will meet with leaders of the intelligence community next week in order to be updated on the facts of this situation." Here to weigh in, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Good morning, Ambassador Bolton. And I wonder, first of all, when you have some senior Democrats in Capitol Hill, that building behind you, saying these are pretty paltry in terms of sanctions and don't have a lot of teeth, what real impact will they have?
Well, I don't think they'll have much impact at all, and I think President Obama seriously compromised the signal that he was trying to send by mushing together both the cyber attacks and the harassment of American diplomats in Moscow. It's the latter that really explains the PNGing of 35 Russian diplomats in this country and closing their 2 compounds, which the Russians are now preparing to reciprocate. The real issue is getting our arms around what we know about what the Russians actually did. And this administration has so politicized intelligence over the past several years, its comments during the election period, its comments now, that I think both the Senate and House committees that are looking into this and the new Trump administration are going to have to consider the actual facts very carefully and decide what they're going to do.
Is the second question, you mentioned the big question there, the second question, what of the legacy of one Barack Obama in terms of Russia? First of all, they had that Russian reset, he and Secretary Clinton. That clearly did not go well. Secondly, in the 2012 campaign, it was Barack Obama who mocked Mitt Romney for saying Russia was our biggest geopolitical foe, and now here he is on the way out the door, seeming to try desperately to slap Vladimir Putin.
Well, look, the Russians have walked all over the Obama administration for 8 years. It's really been a pathetic performance. So what this last burst of activity has to do is hard to say. I do think it's intended to try and box the Trump administration in. I think it will fail. This is simply an executive order. If President Trump decides to reverse it, it's easy enough to do. But I just want to say, we really need to get past the politics of this, because if even a piece of what is alleged about this Russian activity is true, it is utterly unacceptable. It is an attack on our constitutional system. It is not enough to say, and people should be very careful about this, to say, well, it didn't actually have an impact on the election. You know, the fact that Russian efforts were incompetent or insufficient shouldn't make us feel better. If Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor and all of its bombs and torpedoes had missed, no Americans killed, no ships sunk, would we have said no harm, no foul? No, it's the effort that they made, if this is accurate, that should trouble us, not the fact that it failed.
Great point. And we have 1 minute. So that leads to the final question, which is, what then should the incoming president, Donald Trump, actually do about this? He's been accused, to be fair here, of being too cozy with Vladimir Putin. So moving ahead, what must he do to respond to what you just said?
Right. Well, I would extend the question to Chinese hacking, North Korean hacking, Iranian hacking, lots of hacking that the Obama administration has failed to respond to across the board. Look, we want to try and minimize this, and to do that, you've got to build up both our cyber offensive and defensive capabilities and create structures of deterrence so it doesn't happen again. And how do you do that? In this case, you make the Russians feel pain. The White House press spokesman you had on at the top of the show said President Obama is sending a signal. That is utterly useless. So if you make them feel pain and others feel pain, then the possibility of deterring future conduct like this increases. That's what we need to do.
Great. A lot of noise on this issue. Ambassador Bolton cutting through that noise as he usually does. We appreciate you being on. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ed.
Coming up, they're here illegally, but they're legally allowed to drive. Up next, the shocking number of illegal immigrants hitting our highways. And all year, he told us which movies to see and which ones to skip. This morning, Kevin McCarthy joins us live with his picks for the best and worst movies of 2016.
We're back with this and an update to a story that we brought you earlier this week regarding fraud in the food stamp program. We reported that back in 2016, $70 million were wasted on food stamp fraud. That was actually incorrect. The latest information from 2009 to 2011 shows the fraud at 1.3%, which is approximately $853 million for each of those 3 years. And nationally, food stamp trafficking is on the decline. So sorry about that mistake. Over to you, Pete.
We forgive you, of course. All right, President-elect Donald Trump plans to use extreme vetting of U.S.-bound immigrants, but the Washington Post suggesting that's a waste of time, writing this: Americans deserve to know that those entering the country have been screened carefully. But it will be difficult for Mr. Trump to fashion an even more muscular inspection and monitoring regimen without subjecting visitors and immigrants to outright religious profiling. Well, here to weigh in, former FBI special agent and counter-terror expert Tim Clementi. Tim, thanks for joining us this morning. So the Washington Post is saying we can't do more than we're already doing. Are they right?
Absolutely not. You can always do more because it's not possible for us to know what we don't know in this regard. And you just had a story on 30 seconds ago about fraud in the food stamp system. Fraud occurs everywhere. I mean, you have identity fraud within the United States. We have the greatest databases that exist anywhere on the planet to track who people are and to identify them. And yet, beside that fact, you also have people that are able to steal your and my identity and pretend they're us, get loans, buy cars, get credit cards, steal things. So if somebody can steal the identity of you or I easily and do something within this country, how much easier it is for them to be from a third world country where there are literally no databases and take the identity of another person and come to the United States. If I can give you one quick anecdotal story, I was actually in a cab last week talking to my cab driver, and this individual had come from Pakistan 30 years ago, and it was during the Ronald Reagan amnesty program years, and he was in a rural village in Pakistan, heard about this program, got contacted by an individual that would be able to help him once he got to the United States. He was able to buy a false passport with his real picture on it, came to the United States illegally on a flight on a visa that was obtained under an illegal false name. Once he got in the United States, he contacted a man who owned a farm in California. That individual fraudulently wrote a letter for him saying that this guy had been a farm worker for the last 6 months, and then he used that to then get amnesty under the Reagan program, and then eventually became a United States citizen. Now, he did it not for illicit purposes. He wanted to be able to feed his family and send money back to people in Pakistan, but he was able to game the system. Today, it's that much easier to do that.
Absolutely, and that's what I want to ask, is what's the default? If someone shows up with shady paperwork or no paperwork, is the default to let them in or to give them deference, or is it to say, nope, until you come with something that looks legitimate or is legitimate, we're not letting you in?
No, the default system is if these people appear to be legitimate refugees or asylum seekers, and let's first define those two. A refugee is somebody that outside the United States borders or away from our ports of entry is applying to come to the United States as a refugee. An asylum seeker is somebody who is either already here or at a port of entry to the United States. So they're the same basic program, but we consider them as two different types of entries. So when somebody comes here to the southern border of the United States or seeks through the United Nations refugee programs to come to the United States, all they have to say is, I'm facing persecution because of my heritage, my nationality, my clan of origin, or my political affiliations, or the social group I belong to. Those are the actual parameters that we use. And so if an individual is fleeing a war-torn area of Syria and says, I have no possessions but the shirt on my back, I don't have any identification, but I'm from this village, it was destroyed, I have no way to go back there because I would be persecuted, we cannot in any effective way determine who they really are, other than to interview them extensively if they have family members interview them.
There's a lot of holes in the process, so very briefly, we don't have much time. What is the biggest single step that the President-elect could take to move closer to extreme vetting?
I think what he has to do is look at whether it really helps these people to bring them to the United States borders or to possibly do more to help them within other third-party regions. Like in Jordan, you have a lot of Syrian refugees. Maybe we can help them better save their own countries and stay close to their borders and make it safe enough for them to go back. Because it's not always easy for them when they come to a country like America's. It's such a culture shock, and it's not easy for Americans.
Absolutely. Tim Clementi, thanks for your expertise. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. All right, it was one of the top political moments of the year.
Please clap.
I didn't know that clip was coming. But there's plenty more where that came from. Lee Carter, who's always full of surprises, is here with the top political sound bites of 2016 next hour.
Good morning. It is Friday, December 30th. I'm Abby Huntsman in for Ainsley Earhart this morning. We begin with a Fox News alert. The Obama administration taking aim at Russia and issuing a series of sanctions for meddling in the election. Was the president's play just another shot at Trump? Well, Rudy Giuliani is live with his reaction coming up.
Then new outrage over the college professor who tweeted, quote, "All I want for Christmas is white genocide." He actually tweeted that. But why then is the university supporting what he said? We have that.
And remember when you used to have to, wine and dine the ladies to win their heart? Not anymore. What? Now, not only is chivalry dead, but so is the dinner date. But we had champagne earlier, and now it's on my tie because of Abby. Mornings are better with her, and they're better with you, with friends. We'll get right to that Fox News alert right now. Russia refusing to go tit for tat with the Obama administration.
The stunning development comes after Moscow was slammed with new sanctions for alleged election hacking.
Let's get right to Garrett Tenney live in Washington. He has all the breaking details, and we'll get to Rudy Giuliani. Good morning, Garrett.
Hey, good morning, y'all. It now appears that Russia will not be taking those retaliatory actions against the U.S. for the sanctions that were issued, at least for the time being. Earlier this morning, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov issued his recommendation that President Vladimir Putin respond to the White House with tit-for-tat measures, expelling 35 American diplomats and closing 2 diplomatic facilities in Moscow. However, our sister network in London, Sky News, is now reporting that President Putin has announced he will not be expelling anyone in response to the sanctions, and instead will wait to see what actions President-elect Donald Trump takes once he's sworn in. Yesterday, the Obama administration took a series of actions against Russia in response to its cyber campaign that sought to influence our election, including sanctions on 2 of Russia's leading intelligence agencies, shutting down 2 Russian compounds in Maryland and New York that have been used by Russian personnel for intelligence purposes, and declaring 35 Russian intelligence operatives persona non grata and giving them 72 hours to leave the country. Russian officials widely mocked these sanctions when they were issued yesterday, including Russia's UK embassy, which tweeted, "President Obama expels 35 Russian diplomats in Cold War deja vu, as everybody, including American people, will be glad to see the last of this hapless administration." Lame duck. And as for incoming President-elect Donald Trump, he has long questioned the intelligence community's findings that Russia was behind this cyber campaign. He issued a statement saying, "It's time for our country to move on to bigger and better things. Nevertheless, in the interest of our country and its great people, I will meet with leaders of the intelligence community next week in order to be updated on the facts of this situation." This story long from over, y'all.
Thank you very much, Garrett.
All right. Thank you, Garrett.
This is a story that will be ongoing. And we're gonna let's bring in Rudy Giuliani right now, America's mayor, to give us his take on this, because this isn't just something, as you know, Mr. Mayor, that President Obama is dealing with. This is something that's landing in the lap of the president-elect as well. What do you make of this most recent development, Russia not retaliating, and the back and forth that's been going on?
Well, I find this all part of what is extraordinary in what President Obama is doing. I've never seen a president try to create more problems for a future president. First, he double crosses Israel, and after many times and many other presidents vetoing the condemnation of Israel for taking the settlements, he doesn't, and creates a lack of leverage for Israel and the United States in trying to trade land for peace or try other negotiations. In the last hours of his presidency, he completely double crosses one of our biggest allies. And now, after 18 months of this hacking, he does something about it. Why didn't he do something about it 18 months ago? It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Somebody could honestly say, none of this would have happened if President Obama had been awake. If President Obama had listened to Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney said Russia was a threat and he laughed at him, if he didn't reset the relationship with Russia and give up the defense of the Czech Republic and Poland, give up nuclear defense of the Czech Republic and Poland, if he didn't invite Russia into Syria and bring Russia back into the Middle East after 30 years of being out of the Middle East, after all that, and letting this go for 18 months, 2 weeks before he goes out of office, he does a bunch of these sanctions just to create a problem for Russia. And it's not only too little, too late, it's almost silly in the way he did it. I mean,
and the New York Times is reporting, Mr. Mayor. The New York Times is reporting that they're trying in the White House to box in Donald Trump, your friend. And so I wonder what you would counsel him to do in reaction, because this is basically an executive order. So as you know, on day one, Donald Trump can reverse all of this, but then he has his critics out there saying you're already too close to Putin. So if he reverses them, would that be a mistake?
Well, you make the right decision. Here's what you do. You get your own people to review it. There's no question that the intelligence that President Obama has been getting has either been incompetent or politicized. This is the JV team, right? ISIS was the JV team. This is the president who couldn't figure out how dangerous the Islamic State was when people were telling him that, including me on your show. This is the guy who thought Russia wasn't a threat back just four years ago. This is the guy that allowed this hacking to go on for 18 months. If the Democrats want to be angry about the hacking here, they should get angry at Barack Obama for doing nothing about it. Also, if they hadn't written awful things, the hacking would have meant nothing. If they had actually been writing legal and ethical things and not talking about quid pro quos and not talking about how miserable the candidates were, none of this would have meant anything. Look, hacking is illegal. I do it for a living. I don't do hacking for a living. I do cybersecurity for a living. And this is prolific. And there should be very strong reactions against anyone who did it.
Right, and
but
something that...
Go ahead. I would urge that President Trump, when he becomes President Trump, have his own intelligence people do their own report. Let's find out who did it, and let's bang him back really hard. Not some moving a couple of this one's around and that one's around. They're not hacking from those places. It's totally absurd.
Yeah, and a concern that everyone should be aware of and concerned about. So we've seen acknowledgement publicly on Twitter between Vladimir Putin and President-elect Donald Trump. What's going on behind closed doors with President-elect Trump? Have there been any real conversations with Russian officials up to this point that you know of?
I wouldn't comment on that. You know, I shouldn't and wouldn't comment on it. And the reality is there is only one president at a time, and I think President-elect Trump's statement was correct, you know, that he's going to take a very good look at the intelligence reports that the Obama administration has, and then I would recommend to him that he have his own people do their own independent report so that we get beyond what has been very flawed intelligence. You know, all those reports we had just last year, that President Obama was getting the intelligence reports he wanted to hear, that we were winning the war, that ISIS wasn't that dangerous. I would want my own independent analysis of this, and then I'd want to hit back a lot harder than President Obama hit back. You know, but I'd want to hit the right target.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to solve a murder, you arrest the murderer, not the candy store the murderer went to before he committed the murder.
Well,
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that there's only one president at a time. Usually that's leveled at the incoming president. But Barack Obama's made these decisions in the last 3 weeks on Israel, on Russia, and elsewhere. Is he trying to box in the president-elect? What's he trying to do?
Of course. Why didn't the 18 months of hacking? Why didn't he do something about it 10 months ago? It never would have happened if he had done something about it 10 months ago, or if he didn't know about it 10 months ago.
What does that say about Barack Obama?
Really is an incompetent
what does that say about the legacy of President Obama?
Well, I don't think there's much of a legacy at all. But what it says is that there's a certain pettiness that I hadn't seen before. I mean, to do this after 18 months, when you could have prevented it 10 months ago, to double-cross Israel in the last hours of his administration, after pretending that he was a friend of Israel, which no one believed. I never believed it, not after the Iran agreement. But at least he pretended to be a friend of Israel. To do those two things, to basically reduce the leverage of the next president. Look, a report like this, done correctly, could be tremendous leverage against whomever the hackers are, whether they're the Russian government, Russian operatives, or some other operatives. This would be tremendous leverage that could be used to help us. He's taking that leverage away from the next president. Same thing with Land for Peace. He's taking tremendous leverage away from the state of Israel and the President of the United States in dealing with the Middle East, and that's a shame. And an ex-president should act with more dignity and respect for the presidency than to do that.
But doesn't this go beyond just hacking? In order for President-elect Trump to hit the reset button and get it right in his next term in office, don't you have to understand what it is that Russia wants? And it goes beyond just hacking. They want to undermine the West. This is a much bigger picture than that, right, Mayor?
It's a much bigger picture. It has to be seen in a much bigger picture. And that's why petty little actions like this don't mean very much. It's almost a mockery to say this is too little, too late. I mean, it should have been done 10 months ago, 11 months ago, 12 months ago. If it is really true, the response should be much stronger. But I want to see that report. And then I'd want my own people. I do investigations of hacking. I'd want my own people to investigate this, and I'd want to know who really did it, and then I'd hit them back so hard they wouldn't be able to do it again.
And Mr. Mayor, would you recommend, we've got 30 seconds, would you recommend that on day one, Donald Trump let these diplomats back then and reverse some of these actions?
I recommend that on day one he get his intelligence people together and gather all the information independently, and then make a decision.
Great.
Make decisions based on facts, not just on political reactions.
Sure. We hope you get some downtime with your family down there in Florida. Happy New Year, Mr. Mayor.
Happy New Year,
Good to see you.
Save a little champagne for me.
There may be none left. I've spilled it all.
I'm not sure we can.
Good to see you, Mayor. Have a good New Year.
All right. Well, a popular tourist destination and New York City staple is closing its doors for good in just a few hours.
We send Janice Dean, of course, to the Carnegie Deli to catch up with the last-minute diners and the owner. Is there a last-minute, sale going on there where someone's going to come in and try to rescue?
Sad day. But first, the big moments in politics from 2016. Will Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorable comments be most memorable? Lee Carter is on deck with a look back at some of those moments.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
After a contentious election season, we're taking a stroll down campaign memory lane. Isn't it nice? Some of the hits and misses, the big moments of 2016. Lee Carter, president and partner of Lansky and Partners, joins us now with a look back. You're the best person to do this because you bring in the dials and you show us what the voters are actually thinking. And this comment from Hillary Clinton, I want to play it, really blew up the campaign.
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
So, they tried to downplay it as soon as that came out at a big fundraiser here in New York City, but it changed things.
This was a real shift in momentum. There was no way after this that Hillary Clinton could say that we are stronger together. There was no way that she could say that I'm a president for all Americans, because she basically said half of Trump supporters are deplorable. And it backfired completely because it energized the base. People wore deplorable with pride. You saw so many people on Twitter change their name to Deplorable Joe or whatever it was.
They're having like a deplorable inaugural ball.
It is absolutely one of those moments that things just really shifted.
Also, Donald Trump, when he really sort of, highlighted those outsider credentials and said this.
We've taken in millions and millions and millions of people within the Republican Party. They came out from the Democrats. They came as the independents. And I'll tell you, the thing I'm most proud of is, and I see it when I sign and when I shake hands with people, every 20th person says to me, Mr. Trump, I've never, ever voted before. We're talking about 40-year-old people. We're talking about 50. Are you going to vote? And you never voted before? Thank you, man. That's so cool.
And the mainstream media, time and time again, said he's not going to bring in these new people. There are no of these sort of Trump, Reagan-esque Reagan Democrats. There are no Trump Democrats. They were wrong.
They were so wrong. Look at Michigan, Wisconsin. Election night, one after another, these states switched for Donald Trump, and he was absolutely right. New people came out to vote for him. People were switching sides, and he really was somebody that gave the working class Americans real hope again in a time that they really haven't had some in a number of years.
And something that that kept Hillary Clinton stuck in neutral for so long is something that blew up at the beginning of the campaign, this whole email server issue. She tried to make light of it. Watch.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Clinton, for being here. Critics have questioned some of your decision-making recently, and by you doing this show, I hope it finally lays that to rest.
Oh, I think it absolutely proves their case, don't you?
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Mrs. Clinton. We should stay in touch. What's the best way to reach you? Email?
So real quick, you got mail, but also she tried again and again to try to connect with millennials like Bernie Sanders. Didn't work.
It really didn't. She went over and over. She was SNL. She was all over the place. Jimmy Kimmel. She did this, really trying to show a more human side of her. And it never really came to light. People said over and over again, it seemed forced. She didn't seem natural in these settings.
Similar problem for Jeb Bush.
I think the next president needs to be a lot quieter, but send a signal that we're prepared to act in the national security interests of this country, to get back in the business of creating a more peaceful world. Please clap.
Devastating, and when Donald Trump branded him as low energy, never recovered.
Bless his heart. I mean, if you can imagine, June 15th of last year, they said, the Washington Post published an article saying 5 reasons Jeb Bush is going to be the next president of the United States.
The money, the endorsements, the media.
That's right. And it was the day before Donald Trump announced. And you can see by February 15th, he was just, we all knew it wasn't going to be Jeb Bush.
Lee Carter, from the very beginning, your insights have always been valuable to us, especially here at Fox and Friends. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Good to see you. From the end of a reality TV era to a rash of celebrity deaths, 2016 made plenty of entertainment headlines. We're breaking down this year's big stories, some of them sad, next. Plus, he's become a pint-sized viral sensation after totally schooling a random woman with his street ball skills in this video that went viral. This morning, he's going to try it again against us right here at Fox and Friends. We're going one-on-one coming up.
Eyes on Times Square as New York City places an unprecedented ring of steel around the perimeter to stop so-called lone wolf attacks. A look at the extreme security measures ahead.
And with rumors swirling that Gene Simmons turned down an invitation to perform at the inauguration, we asked him that very question. Was it true? The rocker setting that record straight right here on Fox and Friends.
That is right. And in the good old days, those good old days, you used to have to wine and dine that lady to win her heart, right? But now, not only is chivalry dead, but so is the dinner date. I don't know if that's true or not. We're going to ask these two, Eric Bolling and Kimberly Guilfoyle, about that and about New Year's Eve. They're going to be joining us very shortly on the Curvy Couch.
Yeah, the calm before the storm. Look how quiet that is, not major crowds, but the people who will be right in the middle of it all is our A-team.
That's right. Fox and Friends has become the 5. They are here.
Yeah, literally.
Pretty much.
And we're so excited to have you guys on the couch this morning because you guys are the it team to bring in 2017 tomorrow night.
Yes, we're the only ones that agreed to do this.
Did you not have plans?
So last year, it was really cold, and Kimberly, boy, I got to tell you, we stood outside for 3 hours straight in heels and everything.
Tour, yeah.
Towards the end, this is a little secret that no one really knows. If you took the camera shot down, her feet were so cold, they were wrapping them in blankets and stuff just to stay warm.
So I was just like on like a little pedestal thing. You could put me on a wedding cake.
And what about your heels?
My heels were fine. Thank you for asking.
He was great. He's all toasty, but we did have a fantastic time last year. It was really incredible.
And what we did last year, right before the show, we did some stuff for Fox Broadcasting. We were down in Times Square on a stage, and we're walking around, and it was amazing. The energy was crazy. So we said, hey, next year if we do this, let's get right down in the middle. And that's where we're going to be. We're going to be on 42nd Street.
We're going to be right in Times Square.
We're going to be right in the middle of it and just getting down and talking to people.
You're going to be down with the
And Kimberly, if it gets cold, just snuggle with people.
That's the thing.
There were some volunteers.
There were some volunteers. The brave men of the NYPD.
would love to come over for that.
Yeah, the NYPD. By the way, they have that place locked down. It's so safe. Come out and join us. It's fantastic. NYPD does a great job.
A ton of military there as well.
But they all wanted to take pictures with Kimberly. So.
Obviously.
Yeah, you're going to be second.
And I was a good photographer.
Eric takes the photos.
I take the shots.
Bowling was taking all the shots, and so we're doing that. And then I'm like, hey, Bowling. And then I was with Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice.
Oh,
so
nice.
Then, so many people were down there like, hey, Bowling. Then I was like, hey, Bowling. He's like, oh my gosh, what now?
So you're teeing all this up on the 5 today, as well as getting into Russia and all the other big stories. stories as well?
Russia, big stuff, man. Vladimir Putin laughs off President Obama's sanctions. That was fantastic, right? Oh, yeah, I'll be the bigger man of the two. But the good news is I really think this is great news because it doesn't box Donald Trump into a corner when he becomes president, so he can come in and say, look, we can continue this relationship, this dialogue that we've had.
How does he handle that? Because any move he makes will be perceived as pro-Russian or pro-Putin. I mean, what's his...
What's the move, Pete? What's the move? We got rid of some diplomats that were spies anyway. We closed down a couple of spy centers. Putin clearly says, I don't have a problem with it. I think this is great for our foreign policy going forward.
I call it impotent rage because it's really not doing anything. Like President Obama says he's very angry about this, and I get it. We shouldn't have the Russians meddling in any kind of way with any kind of intentionality in U.S. elections. Nevertheless, if you had advanced knowledge of this prior to this occasion, why didn't you do something before? Instead, you're doing it right on the heels of a new administration coming in, and President-elect Donald Trump will not be boxed in by anybody. So he's going to do what's in the best interest.
At least President Obama was far ahead of the curve about Russia being our biggest geopolitical. Oh wait.
The reset button. I'll have a lot more flexibility after I get reelected. Here's the thing, though. What is it? 21 days now until he leaves office. Now he's done two things. He's done the UN resolution to vote against Israel and the Russian thing. All you got to say, like, hey. Thanks, Obama. Can you just hand over the keys and have how about this? How about a nice, smooth transition of power to the next administration?
Well, both of them, both Donald Trump and Barack Obama at the beginning, it was like a bromance. Finishing each other's sentences at the White House. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was an hour and a half. We're getting along. A couple of days ago, Donald Trump was tweeting out, I'm done with this. That it's not as smooth.
But then they talked on the phone, it sounds like, 2 days ago, and probably said, let's not publicly bash each other. It just doesn't, it's not good for anybody.
So I was filling in for O'Reilly this week, and I had Ryan Priebus on last night, and asked him about that. I said, from my perspective, it looks like President Obama is throwing a lot of roadblocks to the transition of power, the road to transition. He said, we're talking, they talked, like President Obama and Donald Trump spoke on the phone. Valerie Jarrett is talking to Kellyanne. And it goes on and on. The administrations are talking to each other, and that's a positive sign.
But no one likes to talk about when things are working, right? Right. Things are smooth in any way. So we want to get your thoughts on this story. We've been debating it all morning long.
We have to get their thoughts on this.
Millennials apparently are killing the dinner date. Instead of asking someone out to dinner or to a movie.
No more dinner and asking out for dates. It's Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. Why?
It's Frappuccinos.
Well, let me tell you something. A Chick-fil-A date is right up my alley. So I can't throw shade on the millennials.
You got the right
for that.
person to weigh in.
Absolutely delicious. So I think that would be a great choice. Starbucks date, I take a little bit of an issue with, right? That seemed a little chintzy, unless you get the protein pack.
Why are the kids doing this, though?
One of the protein drinks. I don't know. I think it's like safe. They can go there. You're at the Starbucks. You might meet someone else.
Plug in a laptop.
You never know. Free Wi-Fi. Oh my
So I have an 18-year-old, and I let him use the credit card, and I see all these. I see Starbucks. I see all the different various food chains, Chipotle. The charges coming through. That's all they do. They go from one fast food chain. No, they're meeting each other at these places.
They're hanging out.
He's going on a lot of dates you didn't know about.
And it's easier
because it used to be the Dairy Queen and the 7-Eleven.
They don't have to talk to each other. They can just kind of do text, hello, goodbye, what's going on.
They will literally be in the same spot, but they're texting each other.
Yep.
Instead of looking at each other in the face and having a real conversation.
Kids these days.
We got it all figured out, don't we?
Well, do you guys have any resolutions?
Yeah, make life easier. But Bowling and I just keep taking on new assignments, right? He's in for Riley this week. I'm in for Hannah.
He's been killing it.
Yeah, so we'll see. We're going to see. I'm going to do more Kimberly's food court because I think it's the way to warm the heart.
I really think there should be a Kimberly's cookbook.
I think so,
you have to put, she's the biggest foodie in the world. She's good. She knows what's good. She knows what she likes. Yeah. People want to hear what you like.
I think it's true, Bully. It's a very good idea. Like my amazing Fox and Friends
Can I be your agent?
Yes. I have a little apron. Cook it with Kimberly.
Yeah.
That's very cute.
I want to be the agent to this book deal.
I make salami sandwiches.
We will be partying with Kimberly and Eric Saturday night.
Great.
Everyone can do that. You don't want to miss it. It starts 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Kimberly and Eric actually come on 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
10 to 1.
10 to 1?
They made us
3 hours.
I know, but Bowling, I know what happened. Maybe they think we're like getting tired.
Sorry, we just informed
They didn't tell you about it? They made the change.
They cut us back an hour. We have an extra hour.
Jesse Waters demanded an extra hour.
He's very demanding. Hey, by the way, I'm Jesse. This is my New Year's Eve world.
We're all living in Waters' world.
That's a shout out right there.
We're excited for you guys. We'll be watching you.
We're going to send Bowling after.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's, guys.
Let's go over some headlines with Jillian Turner. Good morning, Jillian.
Good Good morning. Kimberly, we're going to need your salami sandwiches because the Carnegie Deli is closing today.
All right.
Perfect timing. Now, we were going to bring you some headlines with a Fox News alert. Unprecedented security is now in place as ISIS warns of new attacks for New Year's Eve. This is a live look now at Times Square, where you can see these dozens of sand-filled trucks that are going to be blocking streets in order to protect the tons of people that are going to be there tomorrow night. The NYPD is making the decision following the deadly ISIS truck attacks in Berlin and Nice, France, just a couple of weeks ago. Nearly 2 million folks are expected to pack the crossroads of the world tomorrow in order to watch the spectacular ball drop at midnight. A Texas police officer is shot now during a traffic stop. He was hit by his partner's bullet, it turns out. Officer Chris Bumpus was shot in the stomach as he tried to arrest a man with an outstanding warrant right outside Fort Worth. His partner opening fire on the suspect as he attacked Bumpus. Both he and the suspect were wounded. We're hearing Bumpus is now out of surgery and in stable condition. He's a Navy veteran who was just named Rookie of the Year by his department last week. Drexel University now defending its professor who tweeted, quote, "All I want for Christmas is white genocide." In a new statement, the school says the university vigorously supports the rights of its faculty members and students to freely express their opinions in the course of academic debate and discussion. In this vein, we recognize Professor Ciccarello. Mayor's tweets are protected speech. But the school did also say his words don't represent their values. And legendary rock band Kiss under fire for rejecting an invite to perform at the presidential inauguration.